Hi, everybody. Welcome on today's episode of Inframe podcast. This, I believe, is episode four.
It is episode
We're on
4.
episode. We're on episode four. So, yeah, we've had some growing pains, but it is what it is.
More like Zeke's
So
technical
on today's episode,
difficulties.
we're actually going to talk. Way to expose me. Like, jeez. On today's episode, we're going to talk about inspo. So stuff that you can draw inspiration from anywhere. You can draw inspo from music. You can draw inspo from I don't know, going to an art gallery, that kind of deal. Today's inspo that we're going to talk about movies, or something along those lines. Maybe TV shows. We can open up the discussion to some other stuff too. But I know Twayne definitely draws a lot of inspo from movies because his lighting is very cinematic, and he's a huge like nerd when it comes to movies.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I'm a huge nerd when it comes to movies, and it's so funny because I don't think I could ever watch a movie without looking at lighting or looking at how it's filmed and trying to guess the lens choices and things like that. And you know what? Something is to be said about that. Maybe I should just turn my brain off to that kind of stuff and enjoy the movie for what it is. And I will do that. Like, usually I'll watch
Yeah.
movies twice if they're worth it. So the first time I watch it will usually be for the story, which is what every movie is filmed for. The second time I watch it is to see if I missed anything the first time around, and I'll look deeper into subtleties and into things that they may have incorporated as plot points, but like subtle messaging and stuff. And like, there's directors that do that really well. So I love doing that kind of stuff, to break down a movie so many times. And I think for me, without sounding super cliche, like Inception, I think I watched that movie like 6 or 7 times. And each time I found something new over and over again,
Yeah.
trying to understand like what? Because like the first time you watch it and you're like, what the hell is Christopher Nolan on? And then you get deeper into it and
Yeah.
you're like, oh, okay. So for me,
Yeah.
it's a process when it comes to watching a movie. I have to watch it the first time just to like figure out like what the story is and how it progresses. Then the second or third time I'll watch it is for everything else. And this kind of started when I was in university. I mean, I'd spend most Fridays and Saturdays watching movies. I didn't have anything better to do. Didn't want to go out really to clubs and stuff. And when all my friends were partying, I would just stay home and I would watch movies 2 or 3 times during the weekend. So, and that's kind of like how I learned to shoot and film things and that kind of stuff. So, I would credit that part of my life to be pretty influential into getting into like cinematography and videography.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I'm the same way. I think with Christopher Nolan films, I've watched his big ones like quite a few times. I think Inception I had like almost memorized at one point because it's so good. I know for me a lot, like I draw inspo from movies, but I also draw inspo from like music videos and stuff like that too. I guess it goes like it's similar in that it's very visual, and it ties into a certain theme, or they're trying to tell a story with their music video. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think of a movie that I really like that's not a Christopher Nolan film.
Like, do you have
um,
like favorite directors like aside from like Nolan? Because I mean, like a lot of us, I think, that got exposed to like videography when it started to become more readily accessible. We were seeing films made by Christopher Nolan, and seeing
yeah,
those types of directors, especially because like Nolan
yeah,
would put out a film like once every 3 years, and I think every everything since The Dark Knight Rises, like everything he's touched has been pretty much gold, right? So people saw The
yeah,
Dark Knight and they
yeah,
were like, "Oh my god, the way that the plot evolved and the tension between the characters and how they were written and how it was directed, like it had Nolan's stamp on like a film noir, even though it was a superhero film. Like The Dark Knight was like the film I think that really cemented Christopher Nolan as like a mainstream director, you know, in a way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's had films before that for sure that were really good, but I think that's when people started to like look at Christopher Nolan and be like, oh my God, this guy's out here making movies. I have to watch every single one. So
Yeah, yeah. I think the thing that attracted me the most to Christopher Nolan's films was his, I guess, everything that he does, like in his movies, he tries to do as practical as possible. Which kind of, for me, I remember watching Inception, and there was a whole behind the scenes where it was that rotating corridor with the or like the shift in gravity. And I think at the time, that was what, 2010 or 2011.
yeah,
Um,
that was
and
2010, and I think I was just going to university.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I think 2010, when I first watched it, I was going into grade 12, and I remember seeing that, and I was like, wow, like they thought of how to recreate this in real life and film it. And I guess that's where I started thinking about like my, I guess, how I shoot, and try to keep things as real as possible in frame. Because somehow like your audience can tell when something's fake, or they can tell, like it feels different when something is completely real. And I had huge respect for Christopher Nolan, even a bunch of other directors who would do practical effects. I think that was really beautiful to me. um, I think there was one, I think it was it Raiders of the Lost Ark, where they actually showed you how they came up with the melting, like people, like at the very end,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
when they open up the ark and it's all this glow, and
Yeah.
they're like, oh, don't look at it, don't look at it, and everyone starts like melting because it was actually wax figures. Like they had
Yeah.
layers and layers of these wax figures, and they had like a I think it was like a heat torch, or like a heat gun or something. And when you watch this thing, you're like, wow, they actually had people like melting while seeing this. But they figured out how to do it practically, and I huge respect to people who do practical effects.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that I think they know that of Christopher Nolan. Like everything's done pretty much in camera, and he shoots film for the most part, and he shoots IMAX film, or he likes to shoot IMAX film. And when he can't get IMAX, he uses the Ari 65 or a Panavision 65. So, and those things, like they aren't easy to get set up. Like his cinematographers must like be like, man, really IMAX again? It's like a 100-pound camera, and like you're not getting that on a gimbal. I'll tell you that you're not going to get it on a gimbal. You are going to mount that on some tracks for your long dolly shots, or you're going handheld. And if you think about filmmaking in that way, like it's kind of cool of how raw it can feel, because there isn't any sort of, I guess, roboticism to the camera movements when you watch some of these films from Christopher Nolan. The only thing that's really smooth are any push-ins or pull-outs or tracking or truck shots or anything like that, right? So, it's interesting because like I look at it. I look at it today in the space of like filmmaking for social media, how everyone's trying to do like fancy transitions and like wipes and whooshes and all that sort of stuff. And there is a place for that in filmmaking, but I don't think I could ever draw inspiration from something like that because it's trendy. Like to me, it's just trendy. It's not anything that evokes an emotion or is telling of any story, in my opinion, right? It's like swiping past people's Instagram stories, That's how it feels when I see those videos, in my opinion. And that's just me. Some people might really enjoy that. But, the stuff that I look for and that I'm inspired by is very sort of grounded, down to earth, simple principles of storytelling, that, evoke emotions. And I think good filmmaking is never really noticed, right? It kind of flies under the radar and the story punches through. And that's kind of the stuff I'm inspired by.
Yeah. One movie that I'm currently thinking of that kind of shaped my current photography is Driver. I forget who directed it. I should have done this research beforehand.
Is that Sam Mendes? Hold on, I could be wrong.
I'm not sure. Where's IMDb when you need it?
I'll tell you. I'll tell you right now.
Uh,
It's Baby Driver, isn't it?
no, no, not Baby Driver. It's with it's the guy from The Notebook.
Oh, Ryan Gosling.
Ryan Gosling, yeah. Um, it was blah blah blah. The director is Nicholas Winding Refn.
Yes,
Sorry,
Nicholas.
it's Drive. Drive is the
It's called
movie.
Drive. Oh my God.
Drive.
Who was the? Oh, Newton Siegel was the cinematographer on that. Okay, okay. I think I've only seen that movie
Yeah.
once.
Have you seen this movie?
I've only seen it
Okay.
once, and it was a long time ago. But tell
Yeah.
me more
If you
about
haven't
it. Like,
seen this movie, by the way, sorry.
was that?
If you haven't seen this movie, for the audience that hasn't seen it, we'll include a link to the IMDb.
Yeah. And
something.
spoilers alert, I guess. Spoilers ahead if Zeke's going to talk about this movie.
Spoilers.
Yeah.
If I talk about yeah. So you've seen it once.
I've seen it once, and that was like back in 2012 because the movie came out in 2011. Yeah, and I saw it once in 2012.
Okay.
But I haven't seen
Yeah.
it a second time. So what about Drive specifically inspires you?
Well, it's the first time or the first couple times that I watched it, I really enjoyed the lighting. Like the lighting was so specific. A lot of the shots were done during the nighttime, because that's when he just drives through the city. I think the opening scene, he's driving at night, I believe. So a lot of it is sort of him sitting in the car, and you'll have, I guess the lighting will be sort of behind him, so he'll be backlit. And what else did I really like about it? It was just the colors were really well done. Like overall, visually, it was beautiful. But it wasn't until I think I was watching a clip on YouTube. Someone was dissecting this movie on why it's so compelling visually, and what they did in this film was they had a quadrant system. So when you're looking at the movie and you divide the screen into quarters, there's always something happening in each one of those quadrants. And whether someone's talking or there's some dialogue, like I think there was one clip where Ryan Gosling was sort of in the front, and behind him in one quadrant was Carey Mulligan, just sort of walking. And she's a key character in this film. So it's small things like that you don't exactly notice. And I remember after watching this, I was like, well, what if I bring this into my photography where I really make use of the scene versus, throwing my lens on 1.8, aperture and just having everything blurred out, like, cause that's the go-to. You blur out the background, you get some subject separation, and, everyone thinks it's a great photo. But watching this film, I was like, wow, you could actually create leading lines. You can show something that's going on in the background that's important, that will kind of catch your audience's attention versus, keeping things in the foreground. So that's I guess that's one example of a movie that really kind of shaped how my photography is currently. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And I think I also remember watching an interview about, I think, with the cinematographer. And this could be another car movie. And if it is, then correct me. But I believe when they were doing, I guess, rehearsals for the movie, they would have Ryan Gosling in the car. And they rig the car up with lights. And, you ever watch a car scene and it looks lit, like well lit? It's never like that in real life. Like, the lights are off inside a car, and the only thing that's going to light you is going to be the ambient street light. So, interestingly enough, the cinematographer shot it wide enough so you'd see some of that ambient street light, but they had rigged the car up such that the guy in the back of the car had DMX controls over the lights and would turn it on as he got closer to the source of light and would fade it back down. And they did that just for the rehearsals because by law, you cannot have the actor operate the vehicle and act at the same time. So whenever you see car scenes, they're always on like a truck bed being pulled along. And that's why sometimes you'll never see the wheels in a dialogue sequence or something like that. Or they'll cut away to a wide and it's just B-roll of them like talking. So it's really interesting. And that made it into the movie. So that opening scene you're talking about, where he's just driving around, that's actually rehearsal
Yeah.
footage. So
Oh. And
yeah,
he's just on a flatbed, and there's just lights that are coming by.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
Ryan Gosling's actually driving the car in that.
Oh, he's driving it.
He's
Oh,
driving
okay.
the car in that, but it
Yeah.
was rehearsal. So like all that footage you see of Ryan Gosling driving the car in that first like opening scene is rehearsal footage because it just worked out to be so well. And it is crazy to think about like the process that also goes into that to create those lighting things that in turn inspire us, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know, like, I thought about it where, what was it? Whenever they're creating, like, filming movies, they get creative with lighting. A lot of the times, they'll rig it so it looks like it's real. But in reality, you have, a light here, a light there. You're trying to replicate certain situations.
yeah. And I love that. See, like that's the stuff that like gets me going. And I look at like commercials even on TV or even things that I'll see on like YouTube commercials before videos play and be like, oh yeah, that's how it's lit. And
Yeah.
the one thing that I kind of learned from like watching movies and commercials is that cinematographers are always trying to motivate light. So basically what you'll see in a frame is a source of light. It might be coming from a window, but it's not going to be window light that's going to be lighting that entire scene. They're going to put a light on the inside of the building or push more light from outside using like a stronger lamp or something like that. And it's I could go on for days about lighting, I could, but I won't. But that's like stuff that really inspires me when I watch film. So guys like Roger Deakins, oh man, like he's super practical when it comes to light. He doesn't have a lot of sort of bulbs in his kit. He kind of plays off what's already in the room and shapes the light based on what's already in the room. He's very much a motivational lighting cinematographer, right? And a lot of them tend to be, but Roger Deakins, I think, is probably the best at it. So, like Skyfall, oh my God, come on, so
Right.
good,
Yeah.
so good.
Skyfall was really, really
Even
I gotta rewatch
1917,
that.
man, like
Yeah.
so good.
Yeah. 1917 had some really interesting lighting, especially like considering they tried to go for that whole one take look.
Yeah, so how do you change your
Um,
lights if you're going for that one take look, right? Like you can't
Yeah.
because in filmmaking, just a sort of tangent, when the hardest thing to set up is your wide shot. Your wide shot is going to be the hardest to light because once you nail the wide shot, you can move lights closer to your subject as you get tighter, right? But in 1917, Roger Deakins filmed that with two lenses. They were the 35 Ari Master Prime, I believe, and the 45 Master Primes. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was just two lenses, and it was on the Alexa Mini LF. And you're like, what? This dude shot with one camera body, basically, and two lenses. And it's like, bro, this guy told an amazing story just using camera movement and
Yeah.
two lenses. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah. And it wasn't even that. It was like they would go from broad daylight to going down in a tunnel, like in the trenches, and then they'd go like they'd quickly change light. Like I can't even think of how that was done where, they're going from outside going in and it still looks continuous.
Yeah, and like I think that has a lot to do with the editing too, because like anytime you go into somewhere dark, it's a cut, and then it fades from black to the scene, right? Or anybody walks by the scene, that's a cut, right? Because they can just mask that out and then continue later on and mask over it and just follow the same path. So like stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like I think another movie that's I think really caught my attention was Birdman, and with what's his name, Michael Keaton and Emma Stone and Edward Norton. That also was filmed as a one take, which was amazing.
Oh, I haven't seen that movie.
So good. So good. It's
Yeah.
basically about a washed up actor who's on Broadway now and hires his buddy Edward Norton to help him out with a play. And so the whole thing has to do with the tension between him and his daughter and then Edward Norton as well. And it's so good. And it's all filmed like in one spot, like in the theater, I believe. So kind of tracks these characters. And it was really well done because even I think the DOP too, like he used really wide lenses. So I don't know how the hell he lit that, honestly. Like, cause I think he used like 20 millimeter lenses because there was no barrel distortion on the lens, but it was very sort of rectilinear, if I'm using a very technical term. The lines were straight, but you knew it was a super wide angle lens. So I watched that whole thing and I'm like, where's this dude cutting? Like, I don't know. Like, it was so cool. And the DOP's Emmanuel Lubezki, and he has a specific style where he likes to use those really wide lenses. Like, if you watch The Revenant, oh man, like I think everything was shot on like 16 millimeter wide lenses. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy. But
Yeah.
and like you when you watch films, you'll pick up on like cinematography styles of people too. And Lubezki's one of those guys that loves wide lenses. Like, and I see how he fit really well with Nolan's idea of The Revenant, with these sweeping landscapes and forest scenes and stuff like that. So that was actually really cool to see. But sorry, it's just some of my inspiration as I rant on about DOPs and directors.
Yeah.
But,
No, I always, like, I remember I would see something sometimes on Netflix on my phone, like either on my commute or something. This was like years ago. I remember like seeing stuff or seeing scenes, and I'd like try to screenshot it. So I remember like I would be on the train, I'd, screenshot here, screenshot there, but I didn't know that Netflix doesn't allow you to do that on your mobile. So I got to work and I'm like, all right, on my lunch break, I'm gonna look at all these screenshots just so I can like take a look and check out the lighting, check out the coloring. I look and it's all black frames because I guess that's what Netflix does. And I was so pissed. I was like, man, I missed this. Now I have to go scrub back and like try to find this scene, or, like there's a show called The Crown,
oh,
and it's shot
oh,
beautifully.
so good. So good.
Beautiful. Like somehow they make it feel like you're in that time period, even though it was shot in like today's world and with a 4K Sony camera.
Yeah.
It's incredible, and the way they light it, everything has this sort of hazy, dreamlike but regal kind of look to it. And I think that was the show that I was trying to screenshot. I was like, man, this is perfect. Like this right here, or like the way they compose this shot. And then I got to work and I'm like, man, like now I have to go back and I have to find all of this stuff.
Hey, you just gotta watch the episode again. I mean, it's probably just as enjoyable if the show's that good, right? So, and
Yeah, pretty much.
the fact that you mentioned that you wanted to like analyze these frames from certain TV shows and movies, there actually is a website that lets you
There is.
look at frame by frame, or not frame by frame, or like at least interesting frames of movies. It's called Shot Deck, and it was actually developed by Lawrence Sher, who's a cinematographer. He's done The Hangover and Joker. He's the DP for the Joker, the one that just came out in 2019 with Joaquin Phoenix. And I think him and his buddies came together and made this website, which is a free resource right now. It's in beta still, I believe, but it's a free resource if you sign up. And you can go and look at every single movie, not every single movie, but a number of movies. And you can look at specific scenes, and you can take that as like inspiration. Say you're putting together like a slide deck for a client, and they're asking for a certain look, and you can show them like, look, this is a look that I think you're trying to achieve, and like this is how we're going to go about it, and this is what we need to achieve it. So it's become a tool for like pre-production planning, I feel, for a lot of cinematographers and producers and directors, right? Because you can easily refer to some of these famous movies and scenes and plan around that if that's what like your client wants. And if you want to try something new, you could even go to that website and like, yeah, I like the way that this was lit. Like, let me try and incorporate that in my work too. So really cool resource.
Yeah. No, I remember you told me about that site, I think a little while back.
I use it
And
on
I
the
was like, man,
daily.
this is
I use it on the daily. Love it.
Yeah, I was like, man, this is cool. And I remember like trying to put a creative shoot together, and I was just piecing the mood board together, and I was referring back to that site. And yeah, no, it's that's a great website for anyone who draws inspo from like movies or any kind of media that way.
Yeah, and I mean, like, there's so many genres out there too of like movies, and like different movies inspire different people. Like, but do you have like a favorite genre of movie that you draw a lot of inspiration from, or just like a genre that you like or you are always drawn back to, no matter who's written it or who's directed it?
Yeah, a genre that I'm always drawn back to are, I guess, thrillers. Um, like for example, So a few years back, I had watched Dexter, like all of Dexter. I enjoyed it all the way up to the last season. Um, and yeah, Dexter was one of those shows that I absolutely loved. And I think ever since then, I was always trying to find shows to fill that gap. Like I'd have certain shows in rotation. I would need something that's thriller, so something a bit more intensive or more intense. And then I would have a comedy on rotation as well. So if I just need to kind of veg out and not really think about anything, I'll throw on a comedy in the background. Um, but a show that I picked up on recently and like binge watched was Killing Eve. And Killing Eve kind of scratched that itch that like Dexter had left behind, and it's shot beautifully, and they definitely tell the story with the shots, not just here's a person and she's psycho and they go through the motions. No, they actually tell the story with the shots that they take, which is great. What else? I'm trying to think. Yeah, I think that is sort of my go-to. If it's not that, it's definitely like fast-paced comedy. So like Hot Fuzz or Shaun of the Dead, I think they're the same director. I think
Shaun of the Dead was hilarious. Loved
right?
it. Loved it. It was like one of like the very first comedies that I understood. Like I was a teenager, I think, when it like came out, and I was like, I can actually understand some of these jokes, and this is quite funny. So
Yeah, but like Shaun of the Dead, like I think that was another movie where they definitely used the frame, because I think there's a scene where it's at the very beginning and he's walking from his place to the bar or something. And during that time, like I think the first pass, it's all his neighbors and just people that are on the street. The second time they show that scene, it's all zombies like roaming around, and you don't even like he doesn't notice it, but you do. Brilliant storytelling using that frame. I think it's the same director as Hot Fuzz. I want to check this
quite
out
possibly,
now.
it's the same two actors. What is it? What's his name?
Simon Pegg.
Simon
It's
Pegg. Yes, yes,
Hot
yeah.
Fuzz, and he's known. I think he did Scott Pilgrim as well.
Oh, he's in
Edgar
that as
Wright.
well.
That's who it is.
Sorry.
No, Edgar Wright is the director for that film, and he did Scott Pilgrim, which is also a fast paced kind of like comedy, but action comedy kind of deal. He did Hot Fuzz. What else did he do? He did quite a bit of films. Um,
Do you have any like go-to
yeah.
classic films that you like really like and like were inspired and like you remember seeing it and you're like, oh wow, like that's cool, or like that's amazing, aside from like the period piece like The Crown that you mentioned, but like any films that you like, that's sick. But like back in
Classic
the day, like
films.
before, like maybe around the time that you were born, maybe, or even before that, like that you've seen now as like an adult.
I'm gonna have to think about that one a little bit more. What's a film that sort of fits that description for you?
For me, Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah.
Morgan Freeman. Oh my God. I remember watching Shawshank Redemption and I was taken aback by it. I was like, this is so well written. It's so beautifully shot. And I believe Roger Deakins did that film. He wasn't nominated for any Academy Awards for that film, but I think the film was nominated for Best Picture in the year that it came out. But yeah, Shawshank Redemption, I remember, was definitely one of those like classic films that I really like.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the one that really kind of leaves an impression on me because it really opened my eyes to the power of storytelling and how storytelling is, you can create parallels, to certain elements and to other pieces as well. Like not sort of, I don't want to say the word like plagiarism, but like there are similarities in certain stories, right? So I remember watching Scarface. Okay. I was grade 11 English. Okay. Grade 11 English. And I'm watching Scarface. I'm like, why the fuck are we watching Scarface? This is an English class. And
Yeah.
that same semester, we also read Macbeth. And our final assignment was to write an essay comparing Scarface to Macbeth. And that is the most fun assignment I have ever done in school. Like, I went to town on that. Like looking at the two, I was like it was just kind of like a light bulb went off, and I'm like, what? Macbeth? Scarface? And you look more closely to it, and it's like, yeah, it does make sense. Like, if you guys have a chance and you've read Macbeth and you remember what Macbeth is about, watch Scarface and you will see similarities through the roof. Through the roof.
Yeah, I gotta do that.
Yeah, like, I'm serious. Like, it was the wildest writing exercise. And I remember the teacher's name, Mr. Slevin. I don't know if he's still around at that school, but Mr. Slevin, I remember him assigning us that, and I thought it was sick. And he was actually a movie buff. This guy had like racks and mountains of DVDs because, you know, I went to high school in a time where DVDs were a thing and streaming wasn't. So he absolutely loved movies, and I thought it was a great way to integrate that medium in an English class, because as much as you're learning about themes and writing styles, like, movies fit into that category as well, right? So I think that's pretty cool. Do you have any favorite movie writers? Like,
no, to be honest, I'm terrible with like sort of, I guess, movie trivia that way. Like, I don't know. Like, I'll know certain movies based on their story versus like who directed it and who was the DP and who the cinematographer was. I'm trying to think now. A movie that I liked when I was a kid was The Green Mile. It was with Tom Hanks, and I forget who the other guy was. But yeah, that was a movie. I don't know if you've never seen Green Mile, right?
Honestly, I haven't.
Does it sound familiar?
As much as I watch so many movies, okay. I feel like I need to watch it.
So The Green Mile is basically Tom Hanks plays a security guard. Hold on, I'm gonna look this up. This is my thing.
You said Tom Hanks, and you know what? I rewatched Forrest Gump over like the holiday break, and I was like, oh my god.
Oh yeah.
Oh my god, Forrest Gump! Like, it's such a feel-good movie, and like, oh, there's people on Reddit that absolutely bash it. Like, I'm like, what? And I'm like, each to their own.
Really?
But yeah, like,
they bash it.
Yeah,
why?
There's people on Reddit that bash it. I don't know why.
Oh.
Just, can you not feel happy for the guy? Okay, like.
Yeah, so it's Tom Hanks and Michael Clark Duncan. Who else was in this? Sam Rockwell was in it.
Okay.
Who else? There's a bunch of people. But anyways, who's the director? Frank Darabont. It's actually the writer's Stephen King. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Stephen King? Oh my god. Like, have you seen The Mist?
No, I haven't.
Oh, go watch that. It'll creep you the hell out. Like, it's another Stephen King movie. Like, so good. Well written.
Yeah.
Well paced.
Well, so this movie, The Green Mile, it revolves around. He's a prison guard. So Tom Hanks is a prison guard, and Michael Clark Duncan? He's a prisoner, and he's sort of like this gentle giant. Like, when you first see him, he's like this really big black guy, and you know, everybody, I guess in that period of time, they were like, oh man, like, he must have done something terrible. But you see him come into the scene, and he's like this gentle giant. And anyways, it was a really interesting movie the way it was shot, because it was all the entire set was in a prison, so there's no daylight, everything is ambient. And they were playing around with the lights, because I don't want to give away too much of the plot, but like lights would flicker and like stuff like that. Like, it's just, you know, they did a lot with all of that stuff.
What year did that movie come out?
I guess what's that? 1999.
Okay, so this is before Astera Titan tubes and things like that, where you could control it via DMX. Well, you probably had DMX control, but like, that's pretty cool. That's really cool.
Yeah. So yeah, that was another film that I really loved. I think I didn't really watch it like a lot, but I remember seeing it, and I think I was a kid, and I was like, wow, this is like insane, the way they told the story. I'm trying to think of any other movies. I guess like when I was a kid, like the biggest one for me growing up was Star Wars.
Yeah. But like the prequel trilogy though, like.
The prequel? No, I'm talking about like the original.
Oh, I was like, like, what do you mean, bro? Like, we grew up in like the early 2000s. Like, we had to deal with like Hayden Christensen as Anakin.
Yeah, no, I mean, we grew up with that, but I remember as a kid, I think episode 1 came out, and my dad was like, no, 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 you need to watch like episode or New Hope, and
Yeah,
you
my
need to
dad said the
watch.
same thing too. He's like, watch 4, 5, 6 first,
Yeah,
then watch
yeah.
1, 2, 3.
I remember renting the VHS. You know, it came in like a
When
box
Blockbuster
set.
was still in business, kids.
Yeah, it was Blockbuster. Yeah, no, those movies definitely, you know, it was more so on the imagination side versus like cinematography, but
Yeah, but like
yeah.
that's what we think of too, right? Like our imagination takes us to places where we're able to create and come up with our own stories, and that serves as inspiration, right? Like Star Wars, I'm sure, has
Hmm.
served as inspiration for a lot of things in literature and in arts and science. I say arts and science because there's people out there that have actually tried to make lightsabers using physics and thermodynamics and things like that. So it's kind of cool to see
Yeah.
something as simple as a movie in science fiction inspire, things today and kind of have them be brought to life in a way. So it's kind of cool,
Hmm.
you know? Oh man, I'm a huge fan of Ari Aster. Ari
Of what?
Aster,
Sorry.
Ari Aster. He's a writer, and
Okay.
I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. Ari. I'm gonna say Ari. How do you pronounce the camera? Ari or Ari?
Ari.
Ari Alexa, right?
I have a friend. I have a friend named Ari. So yeah,
Yeah.
I say Ari.
So this Ari, I guess I'm gonna say Ari now because it's Ari, I believe. I don't think he's got two R's. Sorry, Ari Aster. And I gotta
Yeah.
think there's something wrong with this guy, or like he's got something like, that's traumatizing him that he's writing into his films. Like, oh
Hmm.
man. Okay, watch the film. There's something wrong with the Johnstons or whatever it's called. I think that's what it's called.
Hmm.
Oh my god. There's something about the. Hold on. Let me see. I'm gonna type it up right now. There's just so I get the name right and I can tell you guys. Let me find it. Ari Aster. There's something. Oh, sorry. No, it's called The Strange Thing About the Johnsons. And it's a short film. Okay.
Hmm.
And for the most part, it's all filmed in this one house. And Ari Aster's written it, and it's like the most taboo thing ever where like the son sexually abuses the father. And like it's dark, it's twisted, and the mother finds out, but she's quiet about it. I'm sorry, spoilers, but oh my god. Like, and it's just like it makes your stomach turn as you're watching it because you think
Hmm.
like, man, maybe there are people out there that this is happening to, you know? And oh, so wild. And then his next film that is absolutely creepy, Hereditary. Oh,
Mm.
like is so creepy. And like I guess I'm drawn to that genre, like thrillers and like
Yeah.
psychological thrillers and demonic
Yeah.
thrillers. Love that shit.
Well,
Love it.
he did Midsummer, right?
Oh, like that
Yeah,
was messed
Midsummer was
up. Okay,
fantastic.
and here's the thing. You know how that's an Ari Aster film? I loved it because I'm gonna explain this one scene and get mad at me if you want, if it's a spoiler and you haven't seen either. But in There's Something Strange About the Johnsons, when the wife finds out what's going on, she is peeping through a hole in the fence. Okay, and then in Midsummer, when the girl finds out what her boyfriend is doing, she is peeping through a
Uh,
hole in a door. And I was like, what a
yeah.
callback. And I was like, oh my God, what a callback to his
Yeah.
first work. And I'm like,
That's
no way.
awesome.
I was like blown away. And I was like, I saw it. I'm like, that's a callback. I pointed to the screen. I was like, callback. And I was like, my dad's like, what are you talking about? And
Yeah.
I'm like, don't worry about it. But oh man, like that's the
Nice.
stuff I live for, you know? But
Yeah.
Ari Aster, oh my God.
That's
And
awesome.
also another, like, I don't think I could ever write something like that. I don't know how Ari Aster comes up with these ideas or if they're rooted in some sort of truth or some story that someone's told him. But
Hmm.
man, brilliantly written, and it's so gut wrenching and oh, like even thinking about it, I feel sick. Right? Like it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. I've never thought about writing a film or like a story.
Like a
Like to
screenplay.
me, like a screenplay. I would say like the closest that I get to that is maybe creating a storyline based on a song that I've listened to. But trying to create a complete, like a screenplay, is beyond me. I kudos to people that do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm trying to think. So you worked on this project with me for Heartbreak Hotel.
Mm.
So Heartbreak Hotel was a project that Twayne and I have worked on back in 2019. It was based on a song called Pile Driver Waltz. And is it Pile Driver Waltz? I think so.
Hmm?
I think.
Is it what?
I'm trying to remember this song.
That's fine.
Pile Driver Waltz?
I don't remember. I just lit the thing.
Yeah. So, anyways, I guess this is what we're talking about. Inspo. I got inspired by this song, and I remember listening to the song over and over again, and I just had like a vision in my head of what the story might look like. And then I remember calling up Twayne and calling up a model that I thought would fit the role of, I guess, the lead. And I was like, all right, let's put this thing together. Like, I really want to do this. And I remember, trying to go through the motions of creating this story based on this track, and a lot of the lyrics kind of formed the shots that we took. But yeah, I guess that's the closest I can get to writing something. And that was a lot of fun too, because we had some fun with lighting on that shoot in particular.
Yeah. And honestly, it was like, what did we use? We used like 2 small on-camera lights to like throw light, and we didn't diffuse them at all. They were just kind of harsh. And we tried to simulate street light that way as well. So that was kind of fun. I learned a lot about lighting on that project, But
yeah, it was a good one. One of the scenes that stood out to me in terms of lighting was when we were in the diner. So we were sitting in Thompson Diner, and the ambient wasn't good enough. So I wanted to bring some more light to the subject's face. And I remember I think we had you go outside with one of those LED lights.
Go outside, man. If you can't put it inside, shoot it from outside. Yeah.
So we had a light coming from the outside, and we reviewed the shot, and we were like, okay, something's still off about this, because it was I think we were lighting from the broadside, I think, and I was like, all right, let's move the light over a little bit further back so it's a little bit more subtle. And then I remember, so we shot that, and then Twayne came back inside and was like, all right, let's review the shot. And I was like, there's still something missing. So we actually took the second light and put it right on the table to simulate like a candle or something like that.
Yeah.
And then
just as a film.
And then we looked at the shot. Yeah, we looked at the shot. We're like, this is perfect. Like, this is
done.
It. This is how it's going to be lit up.
In a way, it was kind of funny because I mentioned this in like one of my YouTube videos. Like, I look at that, I'm like, oh, it's kind of like a sun wrap. You're lighting from that side, but then you're also filling from the same side as like the key light. So it's kind of interesting. Mm-hmm. So I didn't realize I was doing it. I was just like, yeah, this looks good. And you're like, oh, there's a reason it looks good, because people in the industry use that as like a lighting technique, right? So, but yeah, in terms of like writing, I think for me, I don't think I could come up with a story and write like lines and dialogue, like screenplays. Like, I don't think I could do that. I could come up with an idea and I might pitch it to like a screenwriter and be like, hey, put this on screen for me, kind of deal.
Yeah.
But the most of the writing I do, because I do a lot of like short documentary type films. So it's a lot of like, I'll interview people, and then based on the interview, I'll script out the story and like, but the most of the work already is done by the person who is answering the questions. So it's a lot easier, right? You don't have to worry about delivery and things like that. So, it works more so in your favor if you're writing for documentaries and stuff like that. But yeah. Yeah, documentaries have always been really interesting. Like my favorite set of documentaries is Chef's Table on Netflix. And I've yet to watch that.
Just the way you haven't watched it yet after all this time that I've been hyping it up to you.
I know. I've been, what I've been watching on Netflix and Amazon Prime?
What?
Korean horror films.
Okay. All right.
So, oh my God, the Korean horror film industry, like something else, man. Like if you're into horror like I am, or thrillers, watch it. The Wailing. It's like demonic stuff. Watch that. Really good. And then
See, I can't do horror.
the other one's called like The Switch or something. I don't know. It's basically it has elements of time travel in it. Oh, it's so good. It's so good.
Dang
I
it.
gotta find it. Hold on. I forgot the name of it, but it's so good.
Yeah, anytime there's time manipulation in a movie, or the storyline involves time or something along those lines, I'm like, all right, like you have my attention. I'm ready to go.
What is it? Oh my god,
Yeah,
South Korean horror film.
I've yet to dive into Korean. I think I've only seen two. The first one was Parasite. I think I really thoroughly enjoyed Parasite, and then I saw, I think it was Old Boy,
Hmm.
which was a great film. That was a messed up film, but shot beautifully, so well done.
Oh my god, it's yeah. So she like picks up a phone, and it's apparently someone trapped in another time frame. And
Oh,
it's
that sounds cool.
yeah, and they're only connected through that phone. Oh my god, you know what? I forget it, but yeah, I'll just kind of give a brief synopsis. It's like basically this woman is being abused and calls the phone, and it's connected to the same house but in the future, and the girl that just moved in to that house picks up the phone, and now these two are connected, past and present. And so one actions in the past, of course, affect the present, and so on and so forth. And then you realize that one of them is trying to manipulate the other, but I won't say who. So go watch it. So good, so good. And there's a certain style of cinematography to some of the Southeast Asian films, and I quite enjoy it. It's like you watch
Yeah,
Parasite, and it's like that sort of pastel, warm, glowy tones.
yeah,
And I've always tried to master that in color grading, but I can never get it right. And I'm like, oh my god, but it's so cool.
yeah. Well, a lot of the things too on film sets is they really they really try to coordinate colors on sets. So, for example, if they're trying to convey a certain emotion, they'll have the characters wear certain clothing, or like wear certain colors, and it
Oh yeah,
coordinates with like the set, the scene. Like it's insane the degree of coordination that they go through.
there is such intention in filmmaking, and I think a lot of people don't entirely understand that because a lot of people are exposed to the run and gun world of filmmaking, which is fine.
Mm.
But when you sit down with a production house and a team, you can really plan out the details of your film and find ways to weave the story in other elements. It doesn't have to just be dialogue, right? And I'm always
Mm-hmm.
inspired by how the story is told through other ways in the film, whether it be set design, whether it be, you know, wardrobe or camera movement, even because camera movement can tell a story, and you know, it's it's something that's done subtly. So it's just really cool, when it comes down to planning a film,
Mm-hmm.
compared to like running gun stuff, which is it's fun to shoot. Don't get me wrong. I just don't think
Yeah.
like I'm a fan of run and gun stuff. Like I thought I was, but I don't think I am
Mm-hmm.
anymore. Like for me, it's I hate to say it, but like I'm a bit of a perfectionist when it comes to filmmaking, and
Mm.
so I like to plan things out. And you know what? Sometimes I'm not afforded the opportunity all the time, but if I am, I'm gonna take the time to plan everything.
Yeah. I think I'm still very much run and gun. Like I'm I'll improvise on set, or like something will come up and I'll be like, "Oh wait, no, 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 no. We're going to do this, or I'm going to have to shift you over this way." Or like I'll just it's a shot that we never planned for, and I'll be like, "All right, no, let's try to get something like this."
Yeah,
That's something I got to work towards, is really trying
and that's
to
fine because I think that's okay too because that can come up when you're running and gunning. But I also think that if you give
Mhm.
yourself the best opportunity to be prepared, that
Yeah.
if those happy quote unquote mistakes or situations come up, then you're already prepared to capture it
Mhm.
versus scrambling to capture it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's something that I definitely have to work on. Definitely like building a better mood board than just, here's the vibe I'm going for. Like definitely going through and building a
Yeah.
mood board based on specific shots that I want. That's definitely something that I look forward to doing once this lockdown is over and we're all
Yeah.
back and able to do creatives and stuff.
Yeah. I think, I mean, for me, I find I don't do a lot of mood boards. Like I'll send examples of what I want it to look like, but like you've seen shot lists that I've come up with, right? Like that one project, that documentary you helped me with. Like I'd
Mm-hmm.
every lighting setup down to a T, and I had every lens setting also down to a T as well, and I had time stamped
Mm-hmm.
everything. Like this is how long each scene would take. So, um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, that's when you get a bigger team. You know, you get someone that's also going to be a
Yeah.
script supervisor to make sure that you're on track and continuity is there and all that kind of stuff, right? So it's a big team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a fun shoot. And there
Yeah.
was a lot of I remember like improvising some things. Like I think there was one shot where like I set up the tube lighting so it was going towards the stationary bike.
Yeah. But like that was something
Yeah.
that I didn't think of when I wrote it down. But then we had planned
Mm-hmm.
for this shot and then Zeke saw something and he's like, I was like, yes, dude, let's do that. But you know,
Yeah.
that's the part where you're maybe running and gunning kind of helps you think on your feet a bit quicker, which is, sometimes you need that.
Mm-hmm.
So I honestly wonder some of
Yeah.
the films that like were inspired by how much of it was like not planned for that made it into the final edit. Like I'm always curious.
Yeah.
Like I look at something like Joker, or I look at something with like really raw performances like Prisoners with Jake Gyllenhaal and Hugh Jackman. Like how much of that
Mm-hmm.
dialogue exchange, that anger, that grit was maybe, you know, unscripted kind of deal. I'm always curious.
Yeah. Well, like Leonardo DiCaprio does that a lot. Um like I think in, was it Django, where he's at the table and he like smashes this glass on the table and like lifts his hand up and it's all like bloody and everything. I think that was completely improvised.
Oh damn,
Like it
really?
wasn't scripted.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was bleeding and everything, but like it's that sense of this is real. Like this isn't something that was written down. Like slam your fist down
Yeah,
and
it
your
wasn't
glass would
in the
break.
script,
And
right? Yeah. That's really
yeah,
cool. Like, and I think, like, Matthew McConaughey, when he goes, all right, all right, all right,
mm,
in that movie, that was unscripted.
yeah,
He said that on camera. And, like, people know Matthew McConaughey for those three or
for
four
that.
all rights. It's so funny. Like, I'm trying to
Yeah.
think of what else was unscripted that's, like, people that, like, that's well known.
Yeah, I think one of the another scene. The reason why I mentioned Leonardo DiCaprio was there's a scene in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood where he's in a trailer and he's got that whole monologue where I think he's like breaking down in this trailer, and a lot of it was largely unscripted. I think he just went with the flow, um, and it was a very compelling performance. It's one of those things that you can't really write down on paper. It's sort of like in engineering terms we call it the black box because it's there, like it's there's time and space allocated for it, but then whatever happens inside, that's entirely up to whatever systems inside, or in that case, the actor, it's entirely up to them to fill that. um, and yeah, no, definitely thinking on your feet is a useful skill when you're filming on set, or doing a shoot or anything really. I
Yeah,
think
because
it's a
you're
pretty
going to
useful
run into
skill.
problems, right? Like, and you're going to have to know how to solve them quickly because time is money on a film set. So,
Hmm.
that's where I think run and gun also helps people. Like you can think quickly on your feet, and you can adjust quickly. Whereas someone like me that maybe is a bit of a dinosaur, maybe might need a little more time to solve problems on set. And so,
But no, I think having the balance of being well prepared on set as well as being able to be open to those nuances or those variations, is definitely something that is valuable to have on set. Because if you're always like, this is the shot list, this is the mood board, this is what needs to be done, and we got to stick to the plan kind of deal, something beautiful comes up, you're not going to be able to capture it.
Yeah.
You have to be able to have a plan, but also if something happens, you're like, oh no, this is going to be cool, and then be able to come back to your original plan or weave it in. um, I think that's definitely a very useful skill.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, you probably heard us babble on for quite some time about movies, and we'd love to hear what you guys, are inspired by, whether it be movies, TV shows. We chose to stick to movies and kind of TV shows just because it's what we know best, I think. But like Zeke said, we can be inspired by literally anything. It doesn't have to be sort of a moving picture type medium. So this has been episode 4 of Inframe Podcast. You can find this video on YouTube and this podcast on any podcast platforms. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button as well as follow us on Instagram at Inframe Podcast. We'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.